Good morning.
Morning.
I'm glad to see each and every one of you here this morning. It's been a rough week. As I mentioned in the prayer, it's uncharted times, and this country is in a great state of fear. I had a guy that come in the store, and he talked to me often, and he raises dogs, and he had an old hound dog, and the old hound dog's name was Willis. And what Willis would do is Willis would chase cars, and the neighbors came and complained about Willis chasing cars. So he decided he would take old Willis and put a chain around his neck and chain him to the stop sign. Every time a car pulled up, Willis lunged at the car and he'd shock him with a shock collar. And he did that one morning, and I said, "Well, Russ, how did it turn out?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, he's scared to death of stop signs now." So the fear that is in this country. I want us to focus this morning from going from fearful to faithful. We're going to look at one passage in the Bible to ease our minds and our souls and realize that our God is alive and that He does take care of His own. But what is fear? We're controlled by this coronavirus right now. I work in the grocery store, and I've seen people, I told y'all last week a little bit, humanity is changing because of this. I have seen hatred, I've seen greed, but I've also seen compassion. I've seen every side of humanity there is to see, but I've seen fear the most. People don't know what to do, and they're hitting the panic button, and they're going just crazy with this panic of what are we going to do if this coronavirus comes to us. But this is no new problem. I think this morning at the back door someone mentioned the swine flu. And we can talk about the Ebola virus. And we can talk about all these other viruses that have come through. And we've survived them. So we need to just make wise decisions and use common sense that God gave us. Fear is something that can control your life if you let it. What we have to learn to do is, fear is an attitude of distress or anxiety. Fear is when you can't control something. You have fear of it. So what we have to learn to do is let go of what we can't control. Let me change that. Let's let go of what we attempt to control, because we really don't control anything. But there's one who does. There's one who does. So what we must do is relinquish our attempt to control a thing that we have no control over and turn it over to the one supreme being who does. That's our God. Romans 8, verse 28 will be the text this morning. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. Now what I want to do is I want to briefly break that verse down this morning. For we know that we are Christians, and we have been called by the gospel, and we have answered that call. But what I really want us to focus on is this. We know that all things work together. Work together in the Greek New Testament is one word. It's called syneko. Syneko is where we get our root word for synergy. That means that God can take something bad and mix it with this and make it work together for the good of God. He can make things work together. He can make things grow and do His will. They can work toward His will. Now, if you notice, it says He can make all things. Let's be real short with this. God did not create all things. He created the cocoa plant, but He certainly didn't create cocaine. So what we do and what we create, God can take and make all things work together for good. For them that are called and are are called into the according to his purpose. But this verse brings two things to the forefront of our minds. The sovereignty of God. Our God is in control. Our God's power, his rule, his authority, it oozes out of this text. The next thing I want us to notice is that it also brings forth the providence of God. What is the providence of God? Providence is a word, and in that word we get the word provide from. So our God can provide. It also gives reference to the foreknowledge that God has. So he has a provision. So in order for him to have vision, he has a provision, and he has foreknowledge of things that are coming, and he knows how to counteract those things. Therefore, our God can work together for all things to good according to his purpose. He can make them all work toward his purpose. He's in control, our God. So God takes all things and forms a thing called synergy and makes them work together. God cares for his children. This verse was wrote directly to the church at Rome. It was wrote to those who had answered that gospel call. This verse was written to encourage them. You know, I know you're going through harsh times there in Rome. I know that there's persecutions coming up on you, and I know that there's things that you are enduring. But let me tell you something about your God. He makes all things work together for good that worship him and love him. All things. Nothing is out of his hands. Nothing is out of his control. He makes all things work together. To them who are called according to his purpose. Our God cares about us. And he cares about us so much so that we know he sent his son. But I want to focus on that a minute. If we heard of some man who died on a cross, and we knew nothing about the Bible in our minds, we would think, what a horrible thing. This man has died on a cross. He has been beaten. He has been put through the mill. He has been whiplashed. He's been whipped. He's been tortured. A spear has been stuck into his side. And all of this has been done. This is horrible. But because we know his purpose, we rejoice in the cross, don't we? Don't we find peace in the cross? Don't we understand that that was some of God's plan and his provision? That he sent his son to die on that cross for our good? He truly cares about his children. Matthew 24 and verse 45. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord has made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? We shouldn't have any fear because we're his. Philippians 1 and verse 21 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. Shouldn't have no fear. When we understand what the purpose of Christ was on the cross, when we understand how our God takes his authority and his sovereignty and his power and he makes it work together with his providence, then we know that we have a place in heaven waiting for us. Our God is in control. And he truly cares for us. No wonder Paul could pen those words, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. These are our uncharted times, and we see People hitting the panic button. We see people, I seen someone the other day, I bet she had 50 packs of toilet paper in her buggy. I don't know what you're going to do with 50 packs. I guess October comes, you'll be rolling yards. People are hitting that panic button. But as children of God, we should hit the panic button. For we know all things work together for good to those that love Christ Jesus and are called according to his purpose. Stand strong. Be faithful unto death. That's what the whole book of Revelations is about. Or Revelation is about. Is be faithful unto death. Don't fall in the trap of these perilous times that are here. Be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. If you're here this morning and you need some edification, if you need prayers, if you've never obeyed the gospel this morning, listen. Romans 8:28 was wrote to the church at Rome. It was wrote to Christians. And it says all things work together good for those Christians. If you're not a Christian, you're outside that realm of salvation this morning. We would love and beg and urge you to come forward and to enter into that kingdom and be called according to his purpose. If you need anything this morning, please come forward as we stand and sing.